Hey there, and welcome back to Up Next in Commerce. I'm your host, Stephanie Postles, CEO of Mission.org. And today, we're talking about what it's like living in a world that is changing at a pace that's hard to keep up with. What a student learns today may quickly be obsolete by tomorrow, unless you're in Anika Sharma's class. Anika is a professor of business and technology at NYU Stern School of Business, and she is also a general manager and global client partner at Mindtree. By having her feet in both worlds, Anika sees how Gen Z is changing in real time and understands what brands are asking for on a day-to-day basis. She shared all the trends she is seeing, plus made a few bets on the companies that are doing things well, plus a few that are, well, not so much. Let's jump into it. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to our partners, Salesforce Commerce Cloud. They not only help make this podcast possible, but they are the #1 commerce platform. So go check them out at salesforce.com/commerce. Anika, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I thought it would be a fun way to start the interview to actually hear, what are you teaching right now at NYU? Like, what's in the curriculum? What's the new cool stuff that you're teaching all the smart kids?
Yeah, so I'm teaching a few things. So I, started by teaching at the Rutgers School of Business. I helped the Masters of Mobile Marketing program at the Fairleigh Dickinson University, Leuven School of Business. I've only taught at business schools. I've done a guest lecture at Fordham, the Gabelli School of Business. The course that I teach at NYU Stern School of Business is one that I have set up from scratch. So it's the undergraduate course around social media and mobile marketing, social media and digital marketing. I also teach digital strategy at the MBA level. And then, I teach marketing and so on and so forth. But it's funny because I started all this by teaching advertising, right? And that is what I started teaching about 7-8 years ago. And the funny thing is that if a school comes to me today and says, please teach advertising, I wouldn't know what to teach. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't know. Yep. Because advertising has morphed so much. And I think this world that we live in has morphed so much that even if you told me to design a course in advertising, I wouldn't know where to begin. So it's really funny because as I'm talking to you, I've already changed the curriculum of this course this year than it was, say, for example, even 2 semesters back. And I'm already thinking of partnering with someone to start a course on luxury retail. And so it's just, I can't tell you how exciting it is to be sitting at the cutting edge of what we're doing and bring that to the classroom every day, So it's really fascinating, yeah.
How do you even stay on top of all the new trends that are coming? I mean, how do you think about what's actually going to stick? I'm only imagining if you were designing a curriculum during COVID, like maybe a lot of that, the playbook, can't even use that anymore. So how do you think about, designing something that's actually going to be a bit evergreen?
Yeah, no, so that's a great point. But before that, I should tell you, it's funny because I was just saying this during lunch to a colleague of mine today and said, as a mother of 2 teenagers, I think my teenagers know that I have no love left for them. So what happens is all my energy and my love goes to students. And I was telling people, I said, I cry every semester. Like every semester I cry because, I feel, first and foremost, the change in 4 months, right? Like from taking them from day one to, like 14 classes down, just the light bulbs going on top of their head and stuff like that. And today the students have become parents, they've had kids of their own. And it's just, I'm telling you, it's so joyful. So it's funny because my kids, I think, need to get their love from somewhere else because there's no love left for them. I'm like,
poor kiddos.
I introduce them as like, these are my kids. And my husband sometimes I no, they're not. Like, just be real. So that's really the ethos of what I teach. I think one of the things that people have asked me is, why don't you teach full time? And I said, because that would take away from the ethos of why I teach, right? I want to teach because I want to bring the everyday into the classroom, right? So my promise is to have students be ready to hit the road when they join organizations. And one of the reasons for that is because much as the intent of organizations is to do the training and to get them first time right, by the time they do 90 days of training, the world has already changed, So by the time, I tell my students, I said, in the daytime, I am doing this. And in the night, you get to hear about it. Like it cannot be, this is like farm to fork, but in the education sector. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how much fresher can the content be? So the way I keep it fresh, to answer your question, is to ensure that as I, the consumer, am changing, that I can bring you content that is changing for the consumer. So I always tell my students, whether they are the undergraduate or the graduate level or the executive MBA level, is that I want you to bring your consumer hat into the classroom, right? If it's not working for you, it's not going to work when you're trying to apply it, right? Because the person who's trying to do the work and the person who is consuming the work is the same person, especially I think during COVID. So for example, one of my things that I talk about is there's no longer a B2B and B2C world, right? We're all using Macs, we're all using smartphones, we're all getting some really amazing consumer experiences. So you can't say, oh, but these are boring engineers, and then it's okay if we give them like an okay experience versus say a B2C where it really needs to work. No longer, right? Stephanie is the same person. Anika is the same person. So the way I keep it fresh, coming back to your question, is to bring those aha moments, is to bring those insights, to bring those learnings. My social media class, for example, today has to react to Twitter, being bought over by Elon Musk. And that was not the reality 6 years ago, where I asked them to do a paper called The Death of Twitter. I really thought that Twitter was going to go away and be redundant, right? So the only way to do it is to keep on top of the trends, is to embrace it and almost be a bystander, meaning let these trends come and go and look at them without reacting, but at least understand and appreciate the fact that the consumer is changing because the trends are changing, and therefore you have a new consumer and you need to understand the needs of the new consumer.
Yep. So, I mean, it seems like it's a big benefit by not only being a professor, but also working at Mindtree. Because I think about, back when I used to think, do I want to go to business school? I always was like, well, half these people have never done the thing I'm trying to learn, build a company, whatever it might be. And so I feel like it's actually a very unique benefit to be able to have a teacher who is also working at a company where you get access to amazing brands every day to hear, what they're struggling with. So before I go deeper into that whole, can you give a high level overview of what you do at Mindtree, like what your day-to-day looks like?
So actually it's funny because what I do at Mindtree, now that I'm thinking about it, is almost bring the classroom to my clients, right?
Because you're so far ahead in the classroom.
Exactly. Yeah, because I remember, like, one of the brands, for example, that I work on is one of the brands that we work on is Yankee Candles, right? It's one of my favorite brands. I have been a Yankee Candle user long before, like when in doubt, I spend money on a candle, right? And Yankee Candle it is. And it's funny because I remember the client was like, we don't know why Yankee Candle is not used by Gen Zs. We're not making inroads. So guess what I did? I went to classroom and I said, by the way, what candles do you buy? And why do you not buy Yankee Candles? I remember the students got up and said, we don't know where to buy them, and they said things like, we would buy them as a gift because we can't go wrong with it, but we would never buy it for ourselves because who would spend $40 on a candle, And guess what I did? I went to my clients and I said, let's sit down and I'm going to tell you what just happened, right? And so it was, It's funny because I think every client is trying to understand Gen Zs, and I get an opportunity to interact with Gen Zs every day, right? Almost every week. Yeah. And so it's fascinating for me to see how they are changing. How are they different from the millennials? How are they different from Gen Xers? How are they different from baby boomers? And I think so my job at Mindtree is to, as part of the retail, consumer goods and manufacturing, vertical, which is one of the 4 verticals that we do at Mindtree as a digital and data company, is to make sure that we help the world's largest brands and the most iconic brands get ready for the next step of digital disruption, right? So how do we keep step in step with the consumer who's pushing this? And the consumer has become very finicky and very fickle. I know it because I'm that consumer, right? So how do you do that in a sustainable way, in a way that is reusable, which is not throwaway, right? And how do you do this while embracing what either may be the flavor of the day, like NFTs, or may stick around, say, for example, like Bitcoins and so on and so forth, right? So, everything is moving, yet things have to be stable, yet things have to work together and integrate together. And, how do you do that all with a long-term business perspective? I think is my job, right? And it can be very scary and very daunting. And many times I sleep like a baby because I'm so tired. But it's exciting, right? At so many levels. So that's my job at Mindtree. I tell people I don't, deliver anyone's babies or save anyone's heart. But I definitely, hopefully, I'm doing my bit to make some of the most iconic brands of the world continue to become relevant, not just to people like me, but to my kids, and they get the chance and opportunity to see what makes these brands amazing and why do they continue to be one of those things that we should talk about, at fireside chats.
Yeah. So do you hear any trends right now among these larger brands of things that they're looking for help with? Or is it like, any themes going on that you're kind of spotting?
So yeah, and it's interesting that you asked that because I did want to speak about it, right? And one of the trends. So I should give you a little bit of history. So I'm a I'm one of those people who needs to go to a gym to work out because I need 20 other people screaming next to me in pain, right? I can never do that
Social
in my
pressure. Yep.
basement. There's no one
Yep.
looking to see that I'm behaving like a baby sometimes. So I need my gym, right? I need like 20 people next to me. I need people screaming, shouting, like, giving up.
Yep.
And so as part of all that, I ran a half marathon. I remember my first one about eight years ago. Ran another one. I ran two, I think, last year. And
Wow. Get it,
and I
girl.
became a triathlete last year, right? So obviously, completely stupid and foolish, and not knowing how some things can be bigger than you. Someone said, "All right, do a triathlon." I'm like, "Sure," and
Gosh.
because I love swimming, and so I thought,
Yep.
I know running, I love swimming. What can go wrong? Well, what can go wrong is 26.2 miles on a bike, and you hate biking, right? So it
Yeah.
was like, what am I doing on a bike? My butt hurts. I cannot do this. This bike is not going fast enough. I could be faster in a car. I'm like, what am I doing, right? So talk about aha moments, and the reason I bring that up is because and then I went, as if that wasn't bad enough, I went to climb Mount Whitney, and I didn't do the summit, which I'm hoping
Great.
to
Why
do
not?
this year or next. Right,
Keep
right?
adding to
Because,
it, you
and
know?
guess what? It was only the first mountain I climbed. When you want to climb a mountain, go for the highest one, right? Why start
Yeah.
with like little things around the neighborhood? So anyway, the reason I bring that up is because it is the first time I discovered shops like REI, right? It was the first time that I discovered, running shoes, right? I just thought, who can go wrong with Nike? Like just go and then I started seeing runners looking at me like with disdain and said, "You're not a real runner. You're using Nike." And I'm like, it's Nike. It's a $45 billion brand. How can you go wrong? It's iconic. Like, just do it and whatever, whatever. And they're like, no, real runners wear this. And I remember I saw brands like Hoka and I saw brands like,
Hmm.
what is it called? On Cloud. I didn't even know what those symbols were. Like I kept looking at people
Yeah.
and saying, is this like a language I should know? Like, is this new runners language? And they're like, I'm like, he says, no, this is on cloud. I said, but it shows QC. How does QC translate to on cloud? And people are looking at me, rolling their eyes. And then I saw Brooks. And I remember I was with a friend of mine climbing Whitney, and I told her, I said, "What running shoes do you use?" She said, "Brooks." And I went to a specialty running shoes. I paid top dollar. I've never paid this much for any shoes, not even like really amazing shoes, right? With heels and stuff like that. But I paid top dollar, and my hiking shoes became Brooks, and those shoes have gone with me to Mount Washington. I'm going to go again to Mount Washington in a couple of weeks, and my running shoes are Brooks. And guess what? Nike, what Nike, right? And just like that. Nike has lost. I mean, they call themselves the world's number one running shoe company. And
Hmm.
I'm telling you, like, I was looking up the numbers, and Brooks is now $1 billion brand, right? And it's growing double digit, and it's got like 21% market share of the specialist running category. So there are these little movements that are happening. They're almost like the purest movements that are happening, and I wonder whether the big brands are looking at this and saying, "Oh, this is just one of those little things that'll die away, after some time. We don't need to take this seriously." But I think people who are really doing something, especially during the pandemic, people who are very, very serious, and I believe women have pushed this market share for, especially as far as Brooks is concerned, are getting their act together. And because I think they're small enough, I think they're nimble enough and I think they're agile enough. So they're able to put some best practices as far as brands are concerned, as far as marketing is concerned, which I think perhaps the big brands are not able to do because most of them need a committee to approve something. It's like, oh, we need to change this. All right, let's go ask 80 people. Oh, we need to put this into action. All right, let's go and ask 20 people and then get, approvals, which may have a space of its own. But the point is, I think it slows people down. And today, when digital is really pushing things, I don't know whether big brands can afford that slowing down when the consumer has no patience for it, So this
Hmm.
is one brand. And I have another really, really great example in skincare. But this is what I'm seeing. And I wanted to share this because I've seen this with Hoka, I've seen this with Brooks. I became part of a running community. I'm looking at, and they think I've become part of the running community because I want to run. I am part of the running community because I want to see like what are the trends. I'm like,
Research.
who's using something else and who's using, I'm like, people want to show pictures of them running. I'm like, show me the pictures of your shoes. I want to see the pictures of your shoes.
Oh my gosh. A new kind of market research, Anika
Yes,
style.
a new
I
kind
like
of
that.
stalking, I think, is what it is.
Yeah.
But think about it, right? Think about it. I think an aha moment and a trend is what you see long before it becomes table stakes, right? And I think this is happening in every category. I am just using running as an example because just like that, I spent $300 and Nike lost $300 of my business. The sad part is that I don't think Nike realized that they lost me. Perhaps because they never knew they had me, right? They never had first data information on me, even though I bought from Nike. So I don't think nobody ever wrote to me and said, hey, you came to us for shoes like 2 years ago. How, meaning, I'm sure you would have needed new shoes. So what happened to your shoes? Have you like moved into flip-flops? No one's done that, right? So no one's really mining that data to see, has Anika stopped running? Has Anika taken golfing? Is Anika still alive? Where is that data? And if you didn't know that I was a customer of yours, then I think the problems are even bigger than they can be. And I do believe that big companies perhaps think they can get away with it because their base is very large. But I think this is like erosion, right? If it really happens and it happens very quickly, you will lose people faster than you realize you had people.
Yeah. I mean, so it sounds like it's kind of twofold. One, is your house even in order? Like
Yes.
if you're a large brand. And then
Yes.
two, can you spot the challenger brands and then maybe even learn from them? It sounds like, I know you gave me a funny example around how back in the day, people used to call this like conspiracy theories around the
Yes.
trend catching on. And you
Yes.
brought up the idea around like organics. If you want to tell that, I thought it was very funny about your friend.
Yeah,
the doctor.
absolutely. I changed my pediatrician because I remember he got up and he became a friend of mine, and I remember he said something like, Anika, I don't really know if organics works, and I'm like, first and foremost, let's agree that we're not going to be, like interacting again. I feel very strongly about this. But even at a basic level, I do not need market research. Like, I don't need like a Nielsen to tell me something without additives is better than something with additives. Like, this doesn't even require IQ, right? This is like, okay, I'm not putting anything extra in this to make this brighter, whiter, whatever. And here it is just the way it is. It doesn't look perfect, but I think it's going to taste better. Of course, I'm going to take this, right? And I think, yes, the example that I gave you of organics was, I remember when Organic Valley first came out, this is 19 years ago, you couldn't find anything. Organic Valley was one of those, like hoity-toity cooperative movements. I remember we used to spend money on it. It was like 3 times the cost. And, people would look at us and think that we're stupid. Why won't we go to the Costco's of the world and pick up what everyone else is picking up? So we joined, we started doing organic long before organic was a thing, right? And 11 years later, stores have their own organic brands, right? Costco has its own organic brand. Everything has its own organic brand. Things that should not be organic are organic today. It's like you can sell, like, I don't know what you can sell. I don't know, the stable because it's organic. And I don't think anybody's stopping to think, what does it really mean, in this category. But the thing is, so today it's a little bit like, how do you say, that's what I love about America. When we really embrace something, we really embrace it. It's like the keto diet, or coconut, right? Coconut today is in my coffee. Yeah. And I don't know whether I want coconut in my coffee, though I love coffee, right? But we really embrace it, like wholeheartedly, right? We will not question anything about it. But I think the movement from there to there, as far as organics is concerned, may have been, say, for example, 15 years on the East Coast, right? On the West Coast, it would have been far, quicker. But I don't think companies have the luxury, or brands have the luxury to wait 15 years, right? So, when people talk about trend spotting, are they really talking about trend spotting, or are they talking about things like, oh, trend spotting is like the metaverse is going to be here? Sure, but what are some of the things that are happening in your categories? Do you really have the pulse of the people, right? I remember when Lord & Taylor was shutting down, I'm on the Stern panel for media, and I remember one of the media outlets called me up and said, what do you think about Lord & Taylor shutting down? I said, I don't think anything about Lord & Taylor shutting down. I don't think Lord & Taylor realized who their customer was, right? And when was the last time that someone walked in to the store to buy something? Similarly, I remember I had some students who said, we're so sad, the Toys R Us is shutting down. And I said, I am sad too, because in my business school books, I used to read about it as a case study. Yep. However, let's pause. Let me ask you, when was the last time you walked into Toys R Us to buy something? And suddenly they were like, I said, well, then let me be the bearer of this news. You are the reason why Toys R Us is shut down today. So A, please feel bad because you stopped going. And worse, Toys R Us didn't realize that you stopped going. right? So these are just some of the trends. Earlier, they may have been a lot, I should say, they were more subtle, right? And people didn't realize that it was happening. Today, I think the rug is going to be pulled from under your feet. And so if you don't realize it, the cliff of irrelevance is going to be far steeper than, say, for example, it was 10, 15 years ago. And I think it's digital that is going to push that. So I don't know if you've seen this with other brands, other clients, other guests, but
Yes.
I definitely look at this.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a good mix between D2C founders and then
Yeah,
also executives from very large companies like Walmart, Stanley Black& and
yeah,
Decker, and it's, I mean, yes, what you're saying is very accurate of they're trying to figure out ways to kind of like think more like a startup, whether it's through
yeah,
acquisition or creating their own internal hubs to be able to, think like that, think like a challenger brand.
yeah.
And yeah, then it's interesting though because the D2C companies are also trying to learn from them in a way. So there's a lot that can go both ways. But yeah, I mean, are there any challenger brands that you see popping up right now who are doing things even more different than you've seen that you're like watching really
Yes.
closely?
Yes, I actually am going to use one of them in my conference tomorrow, in my meeting tomorrow.
Perfect.
And it's,
Exclusive
it's really
access right here.
it's really funny. So I don't know if you've heard of this foundation brand called Il Maquillage, right? So
I
okay,
don't
so
think
Il
so.
Maquillage, talk about stalking. Il Maquillage started stalking me on Instagram and everywhere else where I would go. I don't even remember if I saw them on Facebook, but as a person who teaches social media, I wanted to see 6 years ago, talk about conspiracy theory. 6 years ago, I predicted that Facebook was listening to all of us. And now they have, documentaries about it. I'm like, aha, okay. And, 6 years ago, I predicted that the holy grail of e-commerce is going to be when social media is able to figure out how to do an entire checkout process on the ecosystem itself, right? And voila, Instagram offered it and here we are, right? So it was just a matter of time. I kept telling people, I said, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And the reason I bring this up is because I remember Il Maquillage kept telling me, you can choose the right foundation and we will match your foundation and it's going to be true to skin. And, a lot of beauty companies were doing quizzes. And I said, I refuse to believe they can do this. Let me see. So it was really fascinating when I go to the Walmarts and the Targets of the world and I see, women who perhaps, and I'm stereotyping them, perhaps are mothers running their houses like enterprises, like really efficiently, brought down to their knees with a foundation. So
Oh yeah. I mean,
they're
that's a tough job trying to pick the right one,
it is,
honestly.
right? So I'm looking at these women I'm telling you, I love what happens in these aisles. I'm looking at this. I remember the last time I was looking at this woman and she's matching this and she's matching this and she's looking here. It's like when you try on a new pair of shoes and you're hoping you can
Yep.
ask some stranger, how is it really looking, right? Like you want someone to, validate for you and say, am I looking like an idiot or am I like really rocking it, right? And, you're trying to match this thing and the light is terrible and nobody's giving you like, any kind of time. So it's like the worst thing. And then you buy it thinking it's okay. And then you're already having doubts and you come home and the light is different. You're like, oh, it's terrible. So, I started by saying, let me do this as a social experiment. So I went to Il Maquillage. I tried out, they found it, did the entire quiz. They said, oh, this is the foundation. I'm like, fine, whatever. Not only did they sell me a $50 foundation, I'm like, $50 for a foundation, it better make me look gorgeous. Two is, I'm actually wearing Il
Yeah.
Maquillage. Two is, I
Oh,
said
nice.
they upsold me, Stephanie. By the time I finished ordering, my total order was about close to $150. I'm like, really? Did I just spend
Wow, go
$150 on
them.
cosmetics? And then I was like, I'm also a student of cosmetics. I play in that sector. I talk about the sector. Fine, it's investment into this. Here it is. This is my foundation.
And it
And
matched
every time I
perfectly?
wear it, I don't know whether I look like $1 million, but I feel
You
like
do.
$1 million,
You
And
do.
yeah, and guess what they did? And listen, I get emails from companies every day. Stephanie, I was so impressed. They sent me an email, which may have not won any like advertising awards or, they probably would not walk down the red carpet at Cannes. But wow, they sent me an email which says, your stock is running low. Their stock is running low. I'm sure your stock is running low. You don't want to be caught without, at a really critical event without this, this foundation. So if
Wow.
you just want to order with one click, here it is. I was floored. Here was data being used. All they had to do was think, well, if she's even using it like, twice a week or something, it might get over by this time. They had data on the fact that I'd used it. I felt like someone they knew. And all I had to do was one click. and they would order me another bottle. Now, how different is this from every other company trying to do a subscription service? No different. But it was used to personalize something to me. I felt like I was being heard. I felt like someone had my back. And suddenly I felt like it's not like I was going to a red carpet event, but again, to me, it was like, wow, imagine being caught without this foundation. Forget the fact that half the times I don't have time to wear it. But someone took that data to know me better, right? Now, the reason I bring this up is because every company wants to be the startup Il Maquillages. It's a $1.5 billion company, right? And they're launching brands and they continue to launch brands and they're going to do really well. And maybe a big company might buy them, right? And then absorb them and then templatize them to the other 60 brands that they have. And there goes the death of that brand, right? So every company is trying to figure out, why did this email get clicked on and my email didn't? Well, we need to take 5 steps back and look at the best practices, right? This was not just another email that came to my inbox. This is an email that spoke to me specifically and realized that I had bought from them before. So I think new brands, disruptive brands have come in and are nimble enough and agile enough in their mindset where they're able to do these things. And I do believe that maybe larger companies need to set up pods, like tech acceleration pods that are away from the everyday, that keep the lights on, and say, hey, how can we take a little piece of something instead of looking at what is a brand new net new thing that we can do? How do we take what we're doing today, take a little piece of it, and how do we make it like more wow wow boom, like how do we make like really cool? Because we are the cool brands. How can we not do cool stuff, right? So I don't know. That's what I dream about at night. I don't know what you dream about, but
Well, I don't know about all that, but that's pretty epic dreams if I'm imagining.
Yeah. So, again, that's what I think. And I do believe that companies can benefit from thinking like this, right? So it's not so much about, I want to work like a startup and I want to be agile and nimble. I think we all have to take a step back and say, Anika is not Stephanie and Stephanie is not Anika. And they might be in the same psychographics, demographics, geographic locations, whatever, but they're two different people. And I have to talk to them with the hyper personalization of one, so that they feel like, because if a brand knows the kind of day that I'm going through and is able to become a friend, they have my advocacy, they have my loyalty, they have my repeat business, they have everything. How hard can that be, right? Doesn't it sound like, I don't know, marketing basics?
I mean, that's what I was about to say. A lot of it seems like it's getting back to the basics, where for so long it got very overcomplicated. And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of these larger organizations, is so many processes and ways to go about, who can do what, who can talk to what, who can even get into the system. And I think pulling it back down to like, just think like a customer, that's like a theme that I've heard over and over again from like all the guests who've come on, is just think like a customer. And I mean, we were talking to, I forget which big brand this was, but they would send their employees, Colgate. They would send all their new employees on the marketing team out into every CVS, like wherever Colgate was, they would just be like, go there, try and find our brand, see if you like it, look at what other people are doing there, like literally just get in the field and then come back and think like a customer. And so, I mean, that's what the smartest brands are doing right now. Like, how do you get back to the basics? And why are all these startups winning? It's because of that. They're just thinking like, what would I like? And what process do I want to, work with them?
Yeah. On Netflix, just 3 days ago, I was watching The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie and Fitch. I don't know whether you watched that.
Was it good?
It can do better on storytelling.
Okay.
It can do better on storytelling. I think they started right. So I think the storytelling could have been better, but the fact that a brand was so tightly held that then it started almost not just being disruptive, but being discriminative, maybe was the theme of the entire thing. But how it became iconic and how people would work days and nights because it was their brand. It was just cool, right? It was cool. It was a community. It was a culture. I think it was everything that a brand is supposed to be, right? In a brand book. So I think, to your point of back to basics, I think it's a really nice, cool. I wish more companies would take a step back, not just to understand why a brand's successful, but I wish there were more studies being shown on what are the brands that fail and why did they fail. I don't think anyone has sat back and said, what can Toys R Us teach us? What can Lord and Taylor teach us? What can the rising Hoka teach us for the running shoes, right? Instead of saying, oh, it is so small, it doesn't matter to us, right? I think to get up and say, what did we learn from, I was a month before Stephanie in London when Woolworth closed down. I was there for work, and I have to tell you, I remember seeing a newspaper which says, "Oh, 140-year-old Woolworth is going to close down." I think I went and bought something from it just because it is going to close down, right? And it closed down and it's gone. I don't think the new generation knows what Woolworth is, nor does it care. However, as they say, right, if you don't learn from history, you're bound to repeat it. I think there should be lessons taught, not just on how did something become successful, but why did something fail? And what is the one lesson that we can learn from it that we should not repeat? And I don't know whether enough of us, subject matter experts or people who have the opportunity to touch some of these iconic brands on a daily basis. I don't think if we've done that. I have not done that. I just got this idea while I was talking to you.
I like it. Implement it. This should be a new part of your curriculum. I think that or turnaround stories. I think there's so many companies that have had quiet turnaround stories, not the big ones, not like, the Netflixes, the people that like their stories overtold. Everyone already knows they disrupted themselves. But I'm talking about like so many other companies have had certain people come in and just start slightly pivoting the company to where what it is today is like very different than where they started, but like the stories are not told yet. So
that is so beautiful as a thought. I love the turnaround story because it's a story about resilience, right? And I think that has to be there at the heart of a brand that has to continue to reinvent itself, right? And Louis Vuitton, I think, is such a great example to me of a conglomerate that does it, right? If you look at Louis Vuitton, for example, today, people would be shocked to know it's one of the most digitally savvy conglomerates, companies in the world. Who would have thought it, right? I mean, who would have thought that they would be considered thus? But they are, right? Procter & Gamble was on the list of some of the most like disruptive digital companies in the world 3 years, 4 years back, right? And I remember I was surprised and I said, if an FMCG, if a CPG company can do that, anybody can do that, right? So if you look at, if a Louis Vuitton can do that with the kind of brands that they have, they're a company that by definition should be moving slower because they have so many brands in their portfolio, right? But they are moving fast and they're being agile and they're pushing it out there and they're pushing the edges while being true to what their ethos is in terms of luxury brands. They're trying to bring some of the best practices to the Tiffany's of the world or perhaps to Ralph Lauren, who they're trying to get into their fold. And I think, those are turnaround stories, right? Because if a brand like Ralph Lauren that is so iconic becomes irrelevant. And I don't think my kids care about it as a brand, right? It would be so sad because this was something that's been created from scratch as an image, as a lifestyle, right? So to your point, I think it's in our vested interest to make sure that we're not always starting from scratch with the brand, that sometimes we are turning them around to make them more relevant for another generation, So I think that's such an amazing point.
I think Levi's would be a really good one to study. I just think about how I feel like they were cool back with my parents or even earlier, and then they weren't cool, and then now they're cool again, and they have been for maybe like 7 years. So I'm like, what did they do? What did they do to bring back the cool factor that was non-existent for a while? At least when I look back in my childhood, I do not remember it being cool, but I also was not surrounded by people who could afford that price point, so maybe that's why I didn't see it, but I just felt like it wasn't cool until more recently, like the past
very true. I think the only reason my 14-year-old daughter knows about Levi's is because we walked into a store together and she wears my jeans. She's got her own pair of Levi's today, but we walked in together and I see it as a brand where we are two different generations, but we can walk in together and buy the same brand because it's relevant to both of us, right? Both in terms of design, fit, and so on and so forth. She, of course, is at that age where it's very important what she wears, because everyone is seeing it. The other day I saw her in my, in my closets and I was like, what are you doing? Like, she came 2-3 times and I said, what are you doing? Oh, my friends want to know what cosmetics you use. And I'm like, well, did you first tell them I don't have the time for it? But yes, you can go and see. So I know that they're talking about it, right? So they're also discovering things. Now's the time. And much of the discovery, unlike when I talk about the zero moment of truth, right? We discovered things when we went to a store. It's a little bit like Marshalls. You never know what you'll find, but hopefully you'll find something good and you'll come back with 10 things you didn't need, but you will feel better about it, right? Whereas that Marshall's moment that I call, right, the zero moment of truth is happening for them on TikTok. So by the time they walk into a Levi's store or by the time they walk into, whatever store that they wanted to discover the product that they want, they already know everything about it. And they already have discovered it. And they've already used AI to see how it looks on their face and how it looks on their, on their feet and so on and so forth. All they're doing is walking into the store to touch it, feel it, and buy it. And which is why I tell people, I said, the consumer is so different today, Stephanie. When a consumer is walking into a store today, they want to spend money with you, which means that they're not coming to see if they would like to spend money with you. They have come with the purpose of taking their wallet out and giving you money, which means that if they leave you today without spending money, it is like a double loss. You had them when they walked into the door because they've already done their homework. These are smart consumers. They've done everything. All they've come in is to get it because they don't even want to wait for like 24 hours or 48 hours to get the product. You know, they want it right here, right now, which is why shop online, pick up in store is the largest growing segment for e-commerce, right? So if you did not get them and you did not get their money, something is very, very,
Something
very
went wrong.
Yeah, very wrong.
That's
Yeah.
That brings back memories of like my dad and I going shopping and him being like, Stephanie, the line is, we are just looking. We are just looking. Like, we're not buying anything. And like today, it's so opposite. Like, if you're here, there's a reason. And if not,
Yeah.
you messed up. Like, if we did not
Yeah.
follow through, something bad went down here.
It's so funny, right? Window shopping, even when I was young, used to be such a thing, right? You looked at 100 windows and then perhaps you thought of buying something and maybe then you'll buy something, right?
Maybe go back, pick it up once you thought about it a lot. Now, no, it's just
Yeah.
straight to buying. Maybe a little buyer's remorse afterwards, but I'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think you said that so well. So the window shopping phase, I think, has become the online social media, TikTok, digital phase. And therefore, really what you're doing when you're walking into a store is to buy, which is very, very, very different. It's the first time I think in the history of buying, right, and the history of consumer behavior that this is happening. And I think people need to be aware of it. Now, the problem is that there is no metric that will capture the fact that you lost money with me, right? So meaning the opportunity loss. All you know is I walked into a store and I walked out without buying something. And the only metric you will have is X amount of people walked into the store, Y amount of people walked out, and so many transactions happen. And then you might do an average cost of transaction or whatever. But you will never know that, Stephanie walked in to buy something or Anika had, wanted to buy something unless it was a pre-order, right? So there is no column called opportunity loss. So I really feel that I think the other thing that I tell myself, and I don't know the answer for this because I don't know what metric can capture it or how can you capture the data, but I think somewhere maybe the brands need to realize that they're actually bleeding a lot faster and a lot more than they think they are. Meaning when you lose someone, you're really losing them and you're really losing that money. You're really losing that average order cost. You're not just losing someone who's just walking out casually. You actually lost a customer who was ready to spend maybe $100 with you. So I don't think brands are thinking like that today, So it's just, I don't know. Again, it's just observations.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so either.
Because
So-
it'll be scary, right? It'll be scary. If you think like that,
The numbers
it
wouldn't look
would be
good.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah. In the last part of this interview, I wanted to switch over to luxury retail because I know it's something you've been looking into a lot. You brought up Louis Vuitton. I want to kind of hear, what do you see in that landscape right now? And why are you so excited about it?
Actually, I was telling someone the other day, I am so excited about it because I come from the community of brands, right? So for 20 plus years, I had an opportunity to be at the Greys and the Ogilvy's and the BBDOs and handle large brands and see how the Coca-Colas of the world are handled and how, I tell people, I said, I don't know. I don't know whether I'm really looking forward to becoming a grandmother because people would be like, oh, tell us stories. And, most of the times you hear people say, once upon a time, there was a witch that went here. And I would be saying, once upon a time, there was a brand that was relevant to consumers. And now it is not there anymore. End of story.
Let me tell you about Coca-Cola.
I'm not going to be, a grandmother to be remembered for sure. But again, it's funny because those are the only stories I know, at parties, when people ask me something, I'm like, this brand, whatever, and suddenly people are walking away. So this is my DNA, right? This is what gets me up at night. This is what makes me sleep. So it's really funny because I remember my husband and I were watching a Coen Brothers movie. I don't know whether it was Django Unchained or it's one of those Coen Brother movies. And there is a complete bloodbath that is happening, complete bloodbath, right? And people are getting shot and, killed and all of that. And, both of us are sitting on the edge of our chairs, right, watching this. And so after the shot is still going on and something happens and I'm telling my husband, I say, did you see that Coca-Cola bus? I said, did you see that Coca-Cola bus? I said, did you see
Oh
how
my
subtle
gosh.
it was? And I swear, this was in our home entertainment. So he stopped it, paused it, and said, is that what you saw in this scene? Was the Coca-Cola? and I remember telling him, and I was even more shocked than him because I'm like, are you trying to tell me that it was so subtle that you missed it? See how amazing they are?
Oh my
so,
gosh.
you know,
You're my kind of
so
person to watch movies with. That's
yeah, yeah,
exactly how I
yeah.
am
So
too. Did you see
that's
that
how
product
embarrassing.
placement? Beautiful.
I know. I'm like, look how amazing that placement was. You didn't even notice it. It was like so subtle. So, but if after this you want to crave a Coca-Cola, I know why it was, right? So my point is, I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just made this way. But the reason why I love this is because I come from the world of brands, right? And I've seen how you need to treat a brand as a person, as a partner, as somebody who spends your lifetime with you. And some of my most like iconic brands, I love Tory Burch, I love Dolce and Gabbana, I love Prada. I love these brands. I think they. And I was telling someone, I said, when you wear something really well made, you will never go back to fast fashion. You will never go back to you cringe because there was a designer involved in this, and there was you wear Dior, and so there's something to be said about it, and hopefully they can keep that status, right? But I think the
Do you think
point is,
they
I
will
see
though?
something.
Because that's my only question is always around luxury brands. Like, will they keep that status? Because you see all these new brands coming up that
Yeah,
have, very high quality, medium price point, like obviously more expensive than fast fashion, but like
yeah,
a little expensive, but not too expensive. And then I think
yeah.
about the Louis Vuittons and stuff where I'm like, I've personally never bought that only
Yeah.
because in my head, I think it's just because it has the LV on it. And, there's probably many other brands who use the same manufacturer and they can get the same
Yeah.
thing for, 20% of the cost. So like, I want to
Yeah.
hear your perspective because you've been able to predict things in a different way. So I
Yeah,
want
I
to
don't know
hear,
if I've been able to. Yeah, I think now that I look back, maybe I've been able to
you've
predict
been
things. But
pretty
the
good.
point is, and that's such a good point you said, Stephanie, because I almost bought a Louis Vuitton bag the other day,
Mhm.
and I was like, I can't buy it because I can't see myself holding it. It's not me. It's not me because as a person, I can't hold something that has so much branding on it, and I'm not buying it because of branding on it. So it's really funny because I was like, should I buy it? Should I not buy it? Maybe I shouldn't buy it. But again, I may not be the Louis Vuitton customer, right? But I'm definitely, for example, a Dolce and Gabbana customer. I love the color on it. I love the flair on it. I love how it's out there, And I myself am trying to figure out me as a customer, right? Will I buy something that is Dolce and Gabbana? Will I buy something that is Prada? Will I buy something Dior? Is Chanel too like black and white for me? My daughter loves Burberry. I can't touch it, with the barge pole right now. Like I'm like, why? And, she's like, oh,
Yeah.
I love it. And I'm like, how do you even know this? You're a 14-year-old. You're not supposed to know what Burberry is, but she does. So my point is, I think as far as luxury is concerned, it's really that relevance is so subtle, right? So I think, and again, this is just my prediction as a consumer that I see as a trend. Coach, right? There was a time when Coach was the gold standard. Everybody wanted Coach. Now, then the problem became that everybody had Coach, and then nobody wanted
Yep.
Coach, right? And I think
Yep.
Coach has become like, I don't want to be seen with Coach brand, right? So much, and I do believe Coach is in trouble, right? And I do, and I see the Kate Spades of the world and Michael Kors of the world get in there, right? So if you look at it, everyone wants to wear Michael Kors, and suddenly people who really wanted to wear Michael Kors will not wear Michael Kors, right? So you have to choose how iconic do you want to be and how commoditized you want to be, right? So what is too much of sales, what is too much, and what is too less, right? How much can you do to be an exclusive brand and have that status where you want someone to own you, to wear you? How much can you control the ideal consumer? Because you might have an ideal consumer that's there in your brand book, but trust me, the person who's actually buying it does not look like that, right? I mean, if you look at people who actually pick up the brands are people perhaps who want those brands to be aspirational, and I give the idea of Tesla, right? Tesla, we are, for example, Tesla owners. I'm a Prius. I ride the Prius because I'm a tree hugger. When I buy a Tesla, it'll be because I really, really love the environment. My husband drives a Tesla, not because he's a tree hugger by any standard. He loves trees, but that doesn't mean he's going to go out there and stand for it. He loves it because it's an amazing driving experience, right? He loves it because it's the next cutting edge of driving, correct? Similar now, it was very, very important, I think, for Tesla to understand the difference between the two. Because if they had gone after the green movement and the tree movement, they would have had people like me who would have stuck to their cars for 200,000 miles. They wouldn't have had new people, right? So I think to understand why are people buying you, what are they buying you, who are the kind of people who you would like riding with you? Do you want people to think, I am cutting edge, I am cool, I drive this car, I know what a cool experience looks like, I am savvy, I'm geeky cool, right? And if that is your Tesla person, then that's very different than Anika the tree hugger, even though Anika the tree hugger may also want the Tesla, right? Similarly, I think brands have to realize how much is too much of sales. You may want a lot of money, but you have to figure out whether you're doing a value play or a volume play. The other reason why I think luxury brands fascinate me is because when the pandemic opened up, the markets in China, and I remember China was the first one because, just as they were coming out of the first phase of the pandemic and we all watched China, I remember, Stephanie, I heard, what was it called? Revenge buying. I'm like, what the hell is revenge buying? I'm like, I know indulgent buying, I know buying in general, I know spending money for no reason buying. What the hell is revenge buying? Revenge buying is because I have not been able to buy all these months, I am going to go and buy like there was no tomorrow. So I remember Louis Vuitton and some of these other stores, their same day sales were off the chart because there were lines when they opened up because people were like, well, I've not spent for 6 months and I need to spend now, right? I was like, who does revenge shopping, right? Not revenge shopping. I'm like, who does revenge shopping? Revenge shopper is every marketer's dream come true. They're like, listen, don't wait for one day. Revenge shop every day with us, right? So my point is, if you can not just do revenge shopping, but you would rather walk into a Prada or a Louis Vuitton to do revenge shopping because you didn't have opportunities to show the iconic brands that you wear because they were meant to be worn outside, and you've not had that kind of exposure, and you want to go out and spend that money because you have that money to spend. The luxury brands saw some of the largest growths, right, in terms of percentages during the pandemic. And it speaks to the fact that people still wanted to shop, people still wanted to show their brands, people still wanted to go on holidays, right? People still had smaller parties and smaller gatherings when they could. They didn't really stop their lifestyle, so to speak. So I think that's very fascinating for me to try and deep dive and see what makes a luxury brand relevant. How does luxury embrace digital so that you're using digital not to speak to everyone, but perhaps to speak hyper personally to the consumer that you want to go after, right? Is it important for the younger consumers to get into your brand? Like if you look at the Vogues today, the ages of the models in those ads, I think are 12 or 13. I can't believe how young they're getting. So obviously they want them to embrace their brands in middle school and elementary school. It's really fascinating to see, how young can you be to embrace a brand, right? So I think it needs to be treated with a reverence that you can't treat just any other CPG brand or retail brand. So that's what fascinates me. I'm fascinated by how quickly and agile and nimble Louis Vuitton can be. I'm fascinated with how Tiffany wants to continue to remain relevant. So a bigger conversation to be had around luxury. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. But right now, I'm just kind of...
I love all of that. I feel like we need to have a whole round two just to talk about luxury. My one only piece that I really picked up on was the idea of exclusivity and thinking product drops limited quantity because everyone during COVID was shopping and maybe they were getting the Coach bags, and everyone comes out and they all have the same bag. That's when it's not cool anymore. And so it's it has to be cool enough for every once in a while you spot the person that got the same thing, but not every single person has the same thing as you. So I hadn't really heard about that perspective, but like I said, we need a whole round two on luxury because it's fascinating.
And a round three on revenge shopping. I want to meet these revenge shoppers.
Me too.
I do, and I want to actually ask them, how revengeful, at what number does it go really revengeful, right? Because remember we spoke about this a little earlier. This shopper is coming in to spend. The shopper is not coming in to window shop, right? So I want to know What really is revengeful? Is it like mildly revengeful at $5,000? Is it like really wonderfully revengeful at $10,000? And does revengeful mean that you're spending your own credit card or is someone else's credit card? I have like 100 questions.
Yeah. Are you getting divorced? Like, are you really angry? What's happening?
Correct.
I love that. Well, Anika, I know we're at time. This is such a fun chat, as I knew it would be. So where can people learn more about you and the work and the teaching that you're up to?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is a great place to catch up with me, and I'm always happy to connect. I can, as you can tell, I can speak on ad nauseum on, on brands. They make my heart so happy. I believe that I would have done my life's purpose if I can help a few brands continue to remain relevant. I love speaking about digital and tech. And it's one of the reasons I'm here. I love the work that you're doing at Mission and, bringing people together in community. I hope someday you have a roundtable of Mission, maybe just to talk, and get people to meet. I think that'll be so cool, like Mission meets and greets. And so, LinkedIn is great. And I think if somebody messages me, then I'm happy to connect, talk, so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm not hard to find. And you won't find me revenge shopping. You might find me like window shopping with revenge shoppers.
If you do go revenge shopping, let me know. I want to try it out. I really
Imagine like giving you a card and saying, "Well, I'm trying the revenge shopping thing, so be nice to me."
Yeah, I'll see how much buyer's remorse I have after this. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Anika.
Thank you so much.
If you're looking for the #1 platform for all things commerce, there's no better choice. So go check out salesforce.com/commerce.